Morning, guys. I'm Ollie Sinclair. I'm a principal consultant for the cloud practice. We're going to go deep dive into three scenarios: one around virtual entities, one around Power Automate, and the final one around RPA, so robotic process automation. So the first one is the understanding of a virtual entity. So within this scenario, we're actually Crimson has rolled out the contact center. So they've rolled out the Power Platform, and we've rolled out our accelerator on top of that for contact management. So they have contact data, they've got tenancy data, they've got location data, but it's very simplistic, and there are a number of other elements that aren't actually on the common data service yet, or in Dataverse in the platform. So the contact center do continuously receive calls regarding payments and charges. So, it's anybody from ringing up saying, okay, I want to make a payment, or I've made a payment and I can't see this, has this gone in yet? Am I with my balance? These sort of information, these sort of requests come from customers. Now, the implementation of the finance system, it is for future phases. So unfortunately, as the contact center agent, I won't have access to the financial transactions that sit within the ERP system or the old system. Now, what we can do to leverage this is what's known as a virtual entity. Now, there are some elements and some prerequisites that you would need, but effectively you can have what's known as a data provider providing a snapshot of information that can live directly on the common data service. So virtual entities, they're made up of data provider, a data source record, and the actual virtual entity. So as a contact center agent, I can actually jump onto Dynamics and look as records and look at financial transactions. They aren't actually sat in the common data service. They are consumed within an API, whether it be open data or a Cosmos DB, or you can actually build your own custom ones. So what I'm going to show you today is just very quickly the sort of the components of how we've created a virtual entity within the Power Platform with our accelerator, and showing you that it really is just from an end user perspective, it looks like it's data within the system, but it's not. So let me jump into Dynamics 365 now. So you guys can you guys still see the screen? We good? So for the guys that haven't seen Dynamics 365 before, this is sort of how it looks. We've got some information around this is a dashboard around open cases and some of the metrics, which just pulling off data within the system. If I was looking for example, if Ted rang up, I would go and have a look and see if I could find Ted, and it was there's a global search which pulls back some information. I'm looking for Ted Nugent, who's on the phone, and I can go and click on Ted and very quickly be presented with a view of Ted's core information. So as you can see there, you've got the contact information, you've got some things around personal alerts, you've got some personal information, you've got links to tenancy, and some cases, some ASB incidents that they've been involved with. So already we have some information that was already been a part of the contact management data, but what we don't have is extra tenancy information around this specific transaction that Ted has been doing. So the way to do that, what I've done behind the scenes is I've mocked up an API, which is an OData API, to actually show some transaction data. So behind the scenes, there is a surface, there's an SVC service that shows a load of data that I'm going to try and consume within Dynamics 365. So the first thing that needs to happen is to create the OData data source. So I'd select my URL and actually provide a couple of queries around UPRNs and tenancy IDs to get the right information. And with this record and just linking the right OData API, I can actually consume a load of tenancy records. Now, what does that look like in practice? Well, if I go back to Ted and go to his tenancy record, which is linked to him, you'll see some more information about the tenancy, which is great. There's the location. There's a bit of a process where we know it's an active tenancy, and we want to have a look at some financial details around this tenancy. Now, out of the box, the contact center has some agreement information, what deposit's been paid, a view of the charges, but no real understanding of the transactions. Well, what we've done here now is this subgrid shows all of the individual tenancy transactions that's come through from that data service. Now that's absolutely fantastic. We can go ahead and interrogate that information and say, Ted, yeah, I'm just double checking that I paid my court costs a couple of months ago, just making sure that I'm not going to get fined again or whatever it may be. And an agent can come in here, and even though this information is not on the data, not in the database, because it's consumed through a virtual entity, you can actually see the information on here. And that housing transaction ID are the IDs that you would have got through your API. So again, being able to surface data from different data sources directly within Dynamics means that you as a contact center agent, I can find different things that relate to TED, even though it's not currently in the system. So this is really useful because in terms of storage within the Common Data Service and Dataverse, you want to keep that as clean as possible, and you don't want to sort of muddy up your contact information or your environment with a load of transaction that really should be sat in an ERP system, a finance system. But what you want to do is be able to surface that so people can understand the intricate details if they need to. So that's the first real example. And obviously, knowing that there's tenancy transactions and the fact that it is represented in the system, then you can do anything that you'd expect. You can have a look at the transactions, and you can do some metrics on those information. It will summate the information just like standard records within the system, but just knowing that it isn't. The one downside to virtual entities, though, is that if you're just consuming an API, it really is read-only information. Now, Microsoft has announced very recently that they have create, update, read, and delete capabilities of virtual entities, but that would take probably a lot more coding to be able to do that. But again, if you're starting with virtual entities and starting with consuming this information at appropriate times with the appropriate type of data, you can then extend that. If, say, for example, the ERP system that you're integrating with is going to be long term, then there's potentially there might be some types of records that you would want to expose a little bit more functionality and be able to actually within Dynamics go ahead and look at these records and actually be able to go ahead and update them, and they would update in the related system. So again, bringing that functionality to you guys is really good. So that's one of the first elements. It's relatively straightforward to show, but it sort of serves a purpose that even if you are right at the beginning of implementing a platform and you just got your contact center in there are ways in which you can surface information that doesn't currently sit in the platform quite easily.